Both Dario Naharis's from Game of Thrones in the same scene, that by itself is worth the price of admission. You've heard the memes, it's Zack Snyder's Star Wars, but it's so much worse than that. It's like Rick and Morty's space opera, but you aren't supposed to laugh at the self-serious tone of each wacky character. But you do anyways. Despite the early negative reviews, I was very eager to see this because, damn it, I just wanted something that was original and looked like it took effort. But now I'm starting to get why we just continue to rewatch old properties. Like, how many times can you get burned by donating your Friday night to another awful Netflix original before you just embrace the safety of yesterday's quality filmmaking? Well, apparently in our household, it's infinity times, because here we are. Bad Netflix movies are like my nightly pairing of Sailor Jerry's and Taco Palenque. It's a lesson I just refuse to learn. Let's give a brief spoiler-free synopsis of Rebel Moon and give all the reasons why we hate it. First, I have to say I have a rule of not looking up or double-checking names or key plot points when making reviews. You are only going to get my general impression of what I actually remember after 2 hours and 4 rum and cokes, which is likely to be completely inaccurate. So let the flimsiness of my recall be the meter of exactly how boring and immemorable each scene really was. So into the movie. It starts out with a big info dump describing what's going on in this universe without showing any visuals related to said info dump. It's just a nice slow camera zoom on a spaceship. In 2003, this might have looked cool, but now it feels like listening to a Wikipedia summary while watching a screensaver. I thought it was a really interesting creative choice, starting off this new franchise by trying to captivate your audience with a fucking history lecture. We then cut to a small farming town that looks like anything in Skyrim, but in space, because there's a big moon in the background. Now, I don't remember the main character's name. She looked like Sarah Connor from Terminator, but with a deep fake of Eric Roberts. It sounds worse than it is. Trust me when I say it works. She's doing the boss bitch stuff by plowing the land by herself as the rugged loner she is, while everybody else parties in town. And space Nazis show up in literal Nazi outfits demanding grain. Now, it's hinted that Sarah Connor Roberts has some history to the regime that these space Nazis represent. The bad guys then do a lot of "we're space Nazis and we're super proud to be mean and evil" type of villain development, and then shit ends up going down. Now, to be fair, the first act was actually passable. It introduced the main characters and established a bit of conflict. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant blindfolded and you're not really sure what the place is going to be like until you get that first taste of the appetizer. Like, is it going to be steak tartare or is it going to be popcorn and peanuts? This one turned out to be mozzarella sticks, and 3/4 of the way down with my first drink, I thought, yeah, I can get down with this. So after shit pops off, the Space Viking village resolves to fight the regime instead of yielding, and thereafter a quest begins to recruit competent warriors from across the stars for the cause. For 90 minutes, and then credits roll. So reason number one people hate this dumpster fire is it is really just an extended Ocean's 11 talent recruitment scene. This is really the whole movie. It's a completely disconnected anthology of the gang meeting yet another unique character with no real struggle getting there, no struggle finding them, and no real struggle convincing them to join.
It's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Now, I'm no storytelling magician, but there are a few basic known mechanisms of the craft that get repeated just about everywhere you go, and modern filmmakers really seem too smart to follow any of them. But therefore is one of the biggest ones, which means a character tries to do something, but something happens preventing that action. Therefore, they have to do something else, which keeps the character engaged. It gives them agency. It makes their decisions relevant to the entire structure of the story and what the end goal is.
We can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, you're f***ed, basically. You got something pretty boring.
God, I see movies.
And
you see movies that you're just watching. It's like, this happened, and then this happens, and then this happens. That's when you're in a movie just going, what the f*** am I watching this movie for?
That's what this was. It was just a continuous and then. The pacing was also absolutely excruciating. With all of these characters in this epic universe that you just introduced us to, we just received straight linear storytelling with the same people, and it felt like a 22-minute TV show that just went way too long. There was no B-plot. The evil space Nazis weren't scheming in the meantime. They weren't coming up with ways to foil their plot as they were trying to recruit people. There was one 30-second scene in the middle of the movie that cuts back to head space Nazi Ed Skrein to like remind you he's there. He's not doing anything except just looking bony, which is like the main thing to tell you how evil he is. And he's maybe about to fuck a tentacle monster. I'm not really sure what was going on there. So that brings us to the second reason people hate this movie, and that is Charlie Hunnam's Irish accent. Somebody actually looked at Hunnam's track record with accents and thought, yeah, need to put a big spotlight on that one. Like when David Blaine shows up at your birthday party, you just don't give him a deck of cards. You want to see him impale himself. So when you've got a legendary voice talent like Charlie Hunnam in your movie, you got to let the man cook with accents. Whoever that was should be slapped in the face on a stage in public because it was one of the elements that was just self-parody. You couldn't get past it. And the funny thing is, I have a soft spot for Charlie Hunnam and his roles in like Sons of Anarchy and Pacific Rim, where he's somewhat passable as a working class white American who has the swagger of somebody who made a lot of money this month flipping storage units. But that god-awful Irish accent turned that affection directly into irritation and even outright hatred. Reason number 3, the drama is forced on you at every turn and you sincerely don't have any reason to care. The slow motion and the dramatic yelling over thunderous music becomes grating. It's present through the whole movie, and it's like the sharp violin music that tells you when to jump in a bad horror movie. It isn't there to frame the tension or to increase the tension. It literally serves as the tension. And there are multiple scenes that try to rely on "this is Sparta" type energy, where loud proclamations and monologues better suited for high school theater try to convince you of the weight of what's happening. But it's all just exposition, and Shakespeare, this isn't. The scenes that stand out are Jim Hansu being recruited in the middle of the movie, and with Charlie Hunnam's monologue at the end, where the actors are trying so hard to add stakes to words that the script just doesn't support. I found myself losing track of the stakes because so much of the movie didn't feature anything with the villains. There's this weird thing with the way people see stories now where the entire focus has to be on the main character because being the main character means you're the good guy. And that's what the show is about. It calls back to a type of narcissism because everything is a self-insert now. Even if the writers aren't actually making the movie a thinly veiled autobiography like they're wont to do so often these days, they still see themselves in the ragtag group they're assembling. Noble misfits who are stomping out the most obvious and universally accepted manifestations of evil. So almost no time exists building side characters who are relevant but not morally committed, and certainly no time is spent building up and fleshing out the antagonists who are the very reason the conflict exists in the first place. But with where the camera gets fixated, it really feels like the writers think, you don't want to see them, they're bad. We're good over here. I'm good. Hey, look at me.
Look at me! I'm Mr. Meeseeks! I'm Mr. Meeseeks! Look at me!
It's like the goal is to establish the evil presence and then move on as quickly as possible, just to circle jerk how much you want the good guys to win. The bad guys also get cut down with extreme ease, so it's just more stomp evil porn, where writers want to edge themselves as they fantasize about offing Nazis. Now, this having the villain as just a cheap straw man specifically to be torn down by the good guys can work as a premise for a movie, but not without at least some of the stuff that makes guilty pleasure good versus evil type action movies actually rewarding. Things like charisma, cleverness, chemistry, creativity, competent dialogue, all the C's. And then beyond the lack of dialogue or real chemistry, then you have the characters actually doing stupid things. When you don't have the oh so important but therefore mechanics, or even a designated arc that each character is supposed to move through across the journey of the movie, your only method for setting up action or providing twists in the movie is by winging the events scene by scene. In writing, they call it pantsing, because you make it up by the seat of your pants instead of outlining. And that often ends up with characters doing really inexplicably stupid shit just to make the next thing happen. You have Dario Naharis number 2, who gets an important figure killed by ratting him out in front of the King Space Nazi, and he looks shocked afterwards. There's the scene where the bad guy wants to be extra cruel and make his captor execute his comrade. So he gives him a gun, which he predictably uses to do what you would do if the man holding you hostage gave you his gun. The one that stands out is the scene with Dollar Tree Jason Momoa, who's a slave on some ranch the team wants to recruit. They tell the slave owner they don't have the money to pay for him, to which the slave owner conveniently says, "I like to gamble. Tell you what, he breaks in that wild griffin monster over there, he's yours. But if he doesn't, you're all going in chains and you're mine." If the slave lost, would the team just say, "Oh no, we're slaves now, we gotta honor our word, I guess the empire wins, roll credits"? They would probably fight off or kill the slave owner. So maybe just start with that instead of having us sit through 15 minutes of this bullshit side quest. And going into it that the movie literally can't continue unless this thing happens, like it will. So instead of dramatic tension, it's just an event that you're waiting to conclude so that the story can move forward on to the next thing. Then we have to get into the tropes. It's overflowing with recycled tropes almost to the point of stealing. For instance, that scene of breaking in the griffin was essentially Jake riding the pterodactyl thing from Avatar. It's bad enough when a movie has little original ideas of its own to write off of, but when it's so packed to the brim with other people's ideas, like an overstuffed plagiarism piñata, it's extra egregious. Now, aside from this scene lifted from Avatar and the really bold new creative direction using Nazis as villains, There's Sir Anthony Hopkins taking on the role of C-3PO. There's the Space Witch using lightsabers. There's the bar full of aliens to tell you, hey, we're not in Kansas anymore. There's the dramatic final battle at the end atop a very high place. There's moments where I wanted to see the creativity of new character designs and the aesthetics that were present in this thing, but all of it was so drowned out by these notes that so directly call back to their source material. It's like an unintentional serving of member berries. Now, all of this gets wrapped up in the fact that it could have very easily been a better movie, which is what makes me give it the harshest criticism. I am always harshest when something has the potential and it shits the bed anyways. Like if you're trying to build the world's first helicopter, you get a pass when there's a couple of outtakes, but when you have all of the pieces in front of you and you can look to all of the people who have done it competently before, and when it still ends up in a fucking tree because you refuse to read the user manual, I'm going to yell at you a little bit louder. The special effects are plenty competent. The character designs that aren't nauseatingly derivative are actually pretty cool. All of the actors have chops and potential to drive a really compelling story. Even the premise by itself, although kind of simplistic and done before, is pregnant with possible conflicts and different character arcs, which should have given this thing more than enough go power. But modern filmmakers just cannot figure out how to tell a story. It's like if every NFL team invested all of their money into cutting-edge stadiums with flashy new uniforms and hired all of the best talent available, then just fired all of their coaches. The thing is, I don't think storytelling is actually 4D chess. It doesn't require big brain strategies. It's pretty simple and mechanically consistent. That's what makes this so frustrating, that no studio seems to prioritize finding some workman-like writers who can adhere to basic mechanics that won't put the audience to sleep. This monstrosity of a movie had to exist on a storyboard. Like the entire creative team had to look at each sequence and follow the train of events over and over and over to make this movie happen. And everyone involved was like, yeah, looks tight to me. I don't see what we can improve. Like seriously, if they just got the college kid from local Scriptman to outline this bad boy, to make the structure tight, and then let Zack come in and throw in all of his melodrama bullshit on top of it, you would have been onto something. But holy crap, this was just the bullshit. Essentially a melodrama manure cart with no wheels. Then we have the last point. This is the biggest sin of all. The worst thing you can do with a story. Make it fucking boring. For all the reasons I just listed, I checked out multiple times. Now I know some of you eat up science fiction, so anything with spaceships and laser guns and alien faces is enough to keep your interest, and that's perfectly fine for you guys. But as I say to all of the superhero diehards that will go see the Marvels and call it an 8.5 out of 10, being an easy to please genre fan is not the same thing as being a fan of movies or stories. And as long as that fan base eats up whatever lazy swill the studios feed them, they will keep standards low because they have no reason to raise them. Everyone will associate the medium with the poor quality that continuously comes out, and then the media will explain away the declining interest in that genre as genre fatigue. And then eventually what happens is nobody touches the genre because they think it's tainted, and the people who do engage with it and make content settle for this sci-fi channel level storytelling. So to summarize my rant, you all deserve better. So that's my rant on why everybody hates or should hate Rebel Moon. It was a genuinely awful experience. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.